the previous year.
Many of the critics of our efforts say, oh, you're spending more money. Yes, we're spending more money to keep cops on the street, to keep neighborhoods safe, so that families feel secure in America. I think it's money well spent.
The Senate is expected to pass the measure tomorrow. Greg?
And this vote was mostly along party lines, Molly, but not completely. Which Democrats voted against it? Which Republicans voted for it?
The final vote tally, Greg, was 60-34, with 3 Republicans voting with Democrats to cut off debate and 3 Democrats voting against it. Here's a look at the numbers. The Republicans voting to cut off debate on the spending bill are Senator Cochran of Mississippi, Senator Collins of Maine, and Senator Shelby of Alabama. 3 Democrats voted with the Republicans against cutting off the debate, and they were Senator Bayh of Indiana, Senator Feingold of Wisconsin, and Senator McCaskill of Missouri. But we'll see how they vote on the actual passage of the bill tomorrow, and President Obama is expected to sign this bill.
And the defense funding bill yet to be passed. Why was it not included in the omnibus?
Well, the defense bill is being held aside for now so that an amendment can be attached to it, raising the nation's debt ceiling, or credit limit, if you will, by about $2 trillion. Democrats plan to attach that to the $626 billion defense spending bill, which includes funding for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. But that puts Republicans in a tough spot. Some of them want to vote against raising the debt ceiling, but don't want to vote against the war funding, don't want to against the bill funding the wars. Congress is expected to vote on that defense bill in the next week or so. Greg?
Molly Henneberg. Molly, thanks very much.
Well, patients' rights groups are now very concerned over a loophole in the Senate health care bill. Its current language would apparently allow insurers to put annual limits on medical coverage for expenses and expensive illnesses like cancer, as long as they aren't, quote, unreasonable. But that term unreasonable is ill-defined. So would this allow your insurance company to weasel out of that bill if you got really sick? The latest Fox News Opinion Dynamics poll showing 54% of voters would rather Congress simply not pass health care reform this year, with only 41% in favor of seeing legislation passed. Joining us now is Texas Republican Kay Granger of the House Appropriations Committee and New York Democrat Eliot Engel on the House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee's Subcommittee on Health. Thank you very much for coming in to talk to us. Congressman Engel, let me start with you. First of all, outlined with what I just described, why would Americans want to support the health care legislation as it stands, as the current bill is written, if it doesn't cover them 100%?
Well, first of all, we're not sure exactly what's coming out of the Senate. The House has passed its bill, and our bill does cover everybody 100%. And we're hearing all kinds of things about the Senate bill. If the Senate bill does not cover everyone 100%, then I would have some serious questions about it. So I think the House bill is much preferred. We have none coverage for pre-existing conditions, and we have no caps, either caps during 1 year or lifetime caps, and that's why I think the House bill is much better than the Senate's.
The Senate health care bill's current language apparently would let insurers limit medical care for people with the costly illnesses such as cancer, as long as those limits aren't unreasonable. Congresswoman Granger, the bill is captioned as no lifetime or annual limits. The language of the bill, though, doesn't define unreasonable. I mean, what, first of all, would be considered unreasonable when you're treating a deadly and aggressive form of cancer?
Nothing. What you want is reasonable care from your physician, not some panel that says this is unreasonable. There's no definition of unreasonable there. This is why people are saying that their health care will be worse if this reform, so-called reform, is passed. Their greatest fear, first of all, is the cost, which is probably $1 trillion overall. But what will happen in just this case, where let's say you're in cancer care and continuing it, some panel says it's unreasonable, so you face a catastrophic cost to you and your family from a major illness, or that the health care is rationed. That's what people are so afraid of. That's why this bill has to be stopped.
Congressman Engel, the cost of cancer treatment can actually exceed $100,000 a year, I read today. And a patient battling the disease in its later stages could actually exhaust their insurance benefits. And according to Stephen Finan, a policy expert with the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, a cancer patient could actually be forced to either have to choose between terminating their cancer care or face a financial catastrophe. What kind of cancer patient should have to make that kind of decision?
They shouldn't, and that's why I again prefer the House bill, which would guarantee coverage to everyone with no caps during a single year or during the person's lifetime. That's why I think the House bill is superior. Now, let me just say that people who say they don't want any health care reform to pass, that's really not realistic, that they like the same system, they want to keep it, because the current system is unsustainable. Right now, we've got almost 50 million Americans without health insurance, and that will grow if someone changes their jobs, if someone loses their job. And so a lot of people that have insurance now who say, I want to keep what I have, will find out that if we do nothing, in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, they won't have insurance because their boss will either pull it because he won't be able to afford it, or that they'll lose it. So
how far will the Senate fight to keep these kind of loopholes out of the Senate? Congresswoman Granger, if you could reply.
Well, first of all, I say it's not that no reform should occur. This bill should be stopped. And it's just because a situation like this, there's an almost desperate move to pass it through the Senate, which is why you pick up the paper every day and see some kind of changes made. But it's just exactly what you were talking about. It's what we don't know in that bill,
right,
what's not refined, the cost cuts that are not there to pay for it.
What about the lifetime limits, banning the lifetime limits?
Well, I think I think lifetime limits should be banned, and that's, again, we're talking about two separate bills here. We're talking about the bill that the House has already passed, and again, I think that that is a much preferable bill than the Senate's, but they're going to pass their bill in the Senate, and then we'll have to go to conference. It takes two to tango to pass legislation, and I'm hoping that the good things we have in the House bill, which again says no denying of coverage for pre-existing condition, no lifetime caps, and no annual caps. These are good things, and I believe that if the House bill becomes law, people will find that it will be very good for them, for the American people, and for them individually.
All right, Congresswoman Granger, I just want you to have the final word here, to be fair.
Yeah, right. If you have no lifetime caps, but you have annual caps, it's the same thing. Again, you're talking about an enormous bureaucracy. Who's making the decisions on your health care? How much control do you have? What's it really going to cost? Those are things that people are concerned with, and more people today are saying, no, I don't want this to happen. My health care will actually be worse.
All right. Thank you both for talking to us. We appreciate it, and hopefully they will come to some sort of agreement, some sort of negotiation. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg.
Massive protests now on the streets of Copenhagen. Thousands of demonstrators, tens of thousands really, turning out, calling for countries to take action on climate change. The protest started out peacefully, but then police say they ended up arresting about 600 people for throwing bricks and breaking windows. Riot police putting the downtown area on virtual lockdown. This as world leaders reach the halfway point of the two-week climate negotiations. In Turkey, protesters clashing with police close to the border with Iraq and Iran. That's just some of what happened there. Kurdish demonstrators hurling rocks and firebombs at police. This after the government shut down a pro-Kurdish political party. Police responding with water cannons and arresting dozens. In response to the violence, the government says the party is associated with a rebel